Kevin toasted his champagne, laughing as he told his mistress I'd be gone by morning. He was so busy celebrating his victory, he didn't notice the eviction notice reflected in the window, or that the notification on his phone wasn't a deposit. It was a total asset freeze. He thought he was the king of my castle. He was just a squatter in a silk robe about to hit the pavement. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. The drive home through the gridlock of Buckhead had been a nightmare, the kind where every red light feels like a personal insult from the universe. I was driving my Escalade, the one with the heated seats that usually melted the stress of a 12-hour workday right out of my lower back, but tonight, even the leather felt stiff. My mind was still running laps around the merger I'd just closed, a deal that was going to put my company, and by extension my husband Kevin, into a different tax bracket entirely. I was exhausted. I didn't want champagne. I didn't want a celebration. I just wanted to take off my heels, pour a glass of sparkling water, and sit in silence for 20 minutes before pretending to be a human being again. I pulled into the garage, the heavy door rumbling shut behind me, sealing out the Atlanta humidity. That's when I saw it. Tucked into the far corner of the 3-car garage, right where I usually kept the detailing supplies, was a beat-up Honda Civic. It was older than some of the interns I hired. Rust around the wheel wells, a bumper sticker peeling off the back. My stomach did that weird flip-flop thing, like missing a step on a staircase. We weren't expecting guests. Kevin hadn't texted me. I checked my phone. Nothing. Just a stream of work emails and a notification from Uber Eats. Maybe it was a cleaning crew? No, I used a service and they drove branded vans. Maybe a colleague dropped off files in a rusty Civic? Unlikely. I grabbed my bag, the heavy leather one that weighed about 15 pounds, and opened the door into the mudroom. Immediately, the smell hit me. It wasn't the clean, crisp scent of eucalyptus and linen that my house was supposed to smell like. It was heavy, greasy. It smelled like beef stew, heavy on the onions, heavy on the cheap bouillon cubes. It smelled like the apartment I grew up in before I clawed my way out. "Kevin," I called out, kicking off my heels. My voice echoed in the hallway. No answer. I walked into the kitchen, my stocking feet sliding on the marble floors I had picked out slab by slab from a quarry in Italy, and there she was. Standing at my stove, stirring a pot with one of my wooden spoons, was a woman. From the back, I recognized the messy bun, the slump of the shoulders. But what made my blood instantly boil wasn't just her presence. It was what she was wearing. She was wrapped in my robe, my crimson silk robe, the one I bought in Paris on my honeymoon, the one that cost more than my first car, the one I kept in a garment bag in the back of my closet because it was too delicate for regular Tuesday nights. She turned around slowly, the spoon dripping brown sauce onto my pristine white countertop. "Hey, Isabella," she said, blowing a strand of hair out of her face. "You're home early." Natalie, my stepsister. The audacity radiating off her was almost impressive. She leaned back against the counter, crossing her ankles like she owned the place, smearing grease from the counter onto the silk of my robe. Her lips were painted a bright, jarring red that clashed with the crimson fabric. "Natalie?" I blinked, trying to process the visual data. "What are you doing here? And why are you wearing my clothes?" She smirked. It wasn't a nervous smile. It was the smile of someone who knows a secret you don't. "Oh, this!" She plucked at the lapel of the robe. "I just got out of the shower. I didn't have anything clean. Kevin said you wouldn't mind. He said you have so much stuff, you probably wouldn't even notice." "Kevin said that?" My voice dropped an octave. "Take it off." "God, relax," she laughed, turning back to the stove. "You're always so uptight. I'm making dinner. Kevin's favorite. Beef stew. He says you never cook for him anymore because you're too busy bossing people around. So I thought I'd treat him." I said, "Take it off, Natalie. Now." I stepped forward, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from a sudden, violent need to rip the fabric off her back. "This isn't a hostel. You don't just show up and raid my closet." "Kevin!" she yelled, her voice pitching up into a whine. "Kevin, she's home! And she's being a bitch already!" I heard the heavy thud of footsteps on the stairs before I saw him. Kevin came bounding into the kitchen, looking flushed and happy, wearing nothing but his silk pajama pants, the matching set to the robe Natalie was currently sweating in. He didn't look at me. He walked straight past me, right to Natalie. He wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, burying his face in the crook of her neck, right over the silk I had paid for. Smells good, baby," he mumbled against her skin. "I told you nobody makes stew like you." I stood there, clutching my handbag, feeling like an intruder in my own kitchen. The sheer disrespect was so thick I could taste it. It tasted like bile. "Kevin," I said, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. He slowly lifted his head, keeping one arm draped possessively over Natalie's shoulder. He looked at me with a bored, irritated expression, like I was a telemarketer interrupting his dinner. "Oh," he said, "you're back. We thought you were working late again." "We?" I gestured between them. "Care to explain why my stepsister is playing house in my kitchen wearing my lingerie?" "It's a robe, Isabella. Don't be dramatic," Kevin scoffed. He walked over to the fridge and grabbed a beer, cracking it open with a loud hiss. "Natalie is staying with us for a while. She's having some trouble with her landlord." "She was evicted," I corrected, knowing Natalie's history. Again. And no, she is not staying here. I didn't agree to this. Natalie turned around, pouting, pressing her chest against Kevin's arm. "See? I told you she'd be like this. She thinks she's better than everyone just because she signs the checks." Kevin patted her hand soothingly, then turned his full, arrogant glare on me. "Look, Isabella, things are changing. You're never here. You're always at the office or flying to meetings or doing whatever it is you do to feel important. I'm a man. I have needs. I need a home, not just a house." I stared at him. "I built this home, Kevin. I pay the mortgage. I pay for the cars. I pay for the food you're eating." "That's the problem," he shouted, suddenly aggressive. He slammed the beer bottle down on the island. "You throw that in my face every day. I paid for this. I paid for that." "Well, guess what? I'm the director of operations. I run the company just as much as you do." "You have a title," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "That doesn't mean you run anything." "Shut up," he snapped. "I'm done with your attitude. Natalie respects me. She listens to me. That's why—" He paused, looking at Natalie with a sick, triumphant grin. "That's why she's staying. Permanently." The room went dead silent. The refrigerator hummed. The stew bubbled. "What do you mean, permanently?" I asked. "I mean," Kevin puffed out his chest, "that we're going to be a family. In some cultures, successful men have multiple wives. It's natural. Natalie is going to be my second wife. She's going to give me the children you're too busy to have." I blinked. Once. Twice. "Second wife? Kevin, we live in Georgia. That's not a lifestyle choice. That's a felony. It's called bigamy." "I don't care what the law says," Kevin sneered. "This is my house. I'm the man of this house. If you can't accept Natalie's position here, then you can leave. In fact," he looked around the kitchen, assessing it, "if you can't get on board with the new arrangement, get out. Tonight." Natalie giggled. It was a high, cruel sound. "Yeah, Isabella, maybe you should go stay at a hotel. Give us some space to get settled." "You're kicking me out?" I asked, clarifying the absurdity. "Of my house?" "Our house," Kevin corrected. "And yes, if you're going to bring negative energy into my sanctuary, you can get the hell out, right now." For a solid 10 seconds, I felt like my heart was going to explode inside my chest. The betrayal was a physical blow. My husband, the man I had pulled up from a mid-level management associate position, the man I had dressed, trained, and polished, was standing there telling me he was replacing me with my train wreck of a stepsister. I looked at Natalie. She was practically vibrating with glee. She had always wanted what I had, my grades, my parents' approval, my career. Now she thought she had finally won the ultimate prize, my life. I looked at Kevin. He looked so smug. He thought he had trapped me. He thought I was so desperate to keep the veneer of a perfect marriage that I would bow down and accept this insanity just to stay in the house. And that's when it happened. The heartbreak snapped. It didn't heal. It just froze over. The tears that were prickling behind my eyes evaporated. My heart rate slowed down. The wife part of my brain shut down, and the CEO part, the part that negotiated hostile takeovers and fired incompetent executives, booted up. I took a deep breath, inhaling the smell of the onions, and I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile I used when a competitor tried to lowball me. "Is that right?" I asked softly. Kevin faltered for a microsecond, confused by the lack of screaming. "Yeah, that's right. So what's it going to be?" I looked at the wall clock, the vintage oversized analog one I had bought at an auction. It was 7:15 p.m. "Fine," I said. "I'll go." Kevin and Natalie looked at each other. Their eyes widened. They hadn't expected it to be this easy. They started laughing, a relieved, mocking laughter. "See?" Natalie chirped, leaning into him. "I told you she was weak. She doesn't have the spine to fight for a man." "Smart choice, Isabella," Kevin said, picking up his beer again. "I'm glad you're being reasonable for once. Pack your stuff, but don't take too long. We have plans for the evening." "I'll leave," I repeated, checking my watch to synchronize it with the wall clock. "But I need 24 hours. I have arrangements to make. I can't just vanish into thin air." 24 hours? Kevin rolled his eyes. "What, do you need to call a moving truck for your shoes?" "Something like that," I said. "I'll be out of your hair by this time tomorrow, 7:15 p.m., 24 hours. "Whatever." Kevin waved his hand dismissively. "Just stay out of our way tonight. We're celebrating." "Oh, don't worry," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "I won't disturb you. Enjoy the stew." They laughed again as I turned my back on them. They were so drunk on their own perceived power that they forgot the most basic rule of business. Never underestimate the person holding the leverage. They thought the 24-hour countdown was for me to pack. They were wrong. The countdown was for them. I walked out of the kitchen, my heels clicking rhythmically on the hardwood of the hallway. I could hear them behind me, the clinking of spoons, the murmurs of, "I can't believe she actually agreed," the gross, wet sounds of them kissing. I didn't go upstairs to the master bedroom. That room was dead to me now. I knew, with a sickening certainty, that they had probably already been in there. The thought of sleeping in sheets they had touched made my skin crawl. Instead, I turned left down the long corridor that led to the west wing of the house. This was my territory. At the end of the hall was a heavy mahogany door with no handle, just a small black glass panel mounted on the wall next to it. My home office. Kevin hated this room. He called it the cave. He hated that he couldn't get in. When we first moved in, he had demanded a key. I told him there were no keys. I pressed my thumb against the scanner. A soft beep, and the mechanical whir of deadbolts retracting filled the silence. The door clicked open. I stepped inside and pushed the door shut until it locked automatically. The silence was instant. The soundproofing in here was studio quality. The chaos of the kitchen, the smell of the onions, the sound of their voices, it all vanished. I leaned back against the door for just 1 second. My mask slipped. My knees buckled, and I slid down until I was crouching on the floor, my face in my hands. A dry sob racked my chest. How? How could he? After 5 years, after I paid off his student loans, after I bought his mother a house, after I gave him a career, I allowed myself exactly 60 seconds of pity. I watched the second hand on my watch sweep around. 58, 59, 60. "Okay," I whispered to the empty room. "Showtime." I stood up, smoothed out my skirt, and walked to my desk. It was a massive piece of furniture, dark wood, imposing. I sat down in my ergonomic leather chair, the command center. I wasn't Isabella the wife anymore. I was Isabella the shark. And there was blood in the water. I tapped the spacebar on my computer, and the 3 monitors flared to life, casting a blue glow over the room. While the system booted up, I unlocked the biometric safe built into the side of the desk. It hissed open. Inside, neatly organized, were the folders that Kevin knew existed but had never bothered to read. He was always too busy with the big picture to read the fine print. That was his fatal flaw. He loved the appearance of power, but he hated the paperwork. I pulled them out, laying them on the desk like weapons of war. First, the red folder, C, the property deed. I flipped it open. The legal description of the estate was dense, but the owner line was short and sweet. Owner of record, Isabella G. Sterling. Not Isabella and Kevin Sterling, just me. I had bought this land 3 years before we met. I had built the house with the bonus from my first IPO. When we got married, Kevin had made a joke about putting his name on the deed for tax purposes. I had told him my accountant advised against it. He sulked for a day and then forgot about it. This house wasn't ours. It was mine. Next, the yellow folders. The vehicle titles. I fanned them out. The Escalade I drove, the vintage Mercedes convertible, and the crown jewel, the Dodge Challenger Hellcat Red Eye that Kevin worshipped. He washed that car by hand every Sunday. He called it his baby. I looked at the title, Isabella G. Sterling. I had bought it as a birthday gift, but because his credit was shot at the time, I financed it and registered it in my name. He drove it, he bragged about it, but legally, he was just borrowing it. Finally, the Quince Blue folder. Tiu. The prenuptial agreement. This was the nuclear option. I remembered the day we signed it. He had laughed, tossing the pen in the air. I don't need to read this, baby. I don't want your money. I just want you. This is just paper. He should have read the paper. I turned to Freckes, Clause 7, Infidelity and Moral Turpitude. In the event of proven infidelity or cohabitation with a third party in the marital home, the offending party forfeits all claims to spousal support, forfeits all claims to appreciation of marital assets, and must vacate the primary residence immediately upon notice. Immediately upon notice, I read aloud. I pulled out one more document, the corporate bylaws for Sterling Vance Global. Kevin was the director of operations. It sounded fancy. He had a corner office and a corporate card. But looking at the organizational chart, his position was defined as at-will appointee of the board. And who was the board? Me. I had 99% of the voting shares. He didn't just lose his wife tonight. He lost his house, his car, his job, and his income. I reached for the secure landline on my desk. I didn't want to use my cell phone. Kevin was on the family plan, and while he was too stupid to check the logs, I wasn't taking chances. I dialed a number I knew by heart. It rang twice. Arthur Blackwood. A deep, gravelly voice answered. It was 7:30 p.m., but Arthur never stopped working. He was the kind of lawyer who scared other lawyers. Arthur, it's Isabella. Isabella. His tone shifted instantly from professional to alert. Everything all right? You don't call the bat phone unless something is burning. The house is burning, Arthur, metaphorically speaking. I swiveled my chair to look at the monitors where I was already pulling up the bank accounts. I need to execute the Phoenix protocol. There was a pause. We had joked about this protocol years ago, the in-case of emergency break glass plan for a worst-case scenario divorce. Kevin? Arthur asked. Kevin and a third party, my stepsister, in my house, claiming second wife status. Jesus, Arthur breathed. Did he actually say second wife? Verbatim, and he told me to get out. Okay, Arthur's voice turned into steel. What's the timeline? I gave them 24 hours to feel comfortable. I told them I'd leave. They think they've won. I need you here tomorrow morning at 9:20 a.m. sharp. I'll be there, Arthur said. I could hear him typing furiously in the background. I'll bring the team, sheriff's deputies for the eviction, private security for asset protection, and the movers? Yes, full extraction. I want them out and I want everything they touch gone. But Arthur? Yes? I'm sending you a file right now. Check your encrypted email. It's regarding the company accounts. I hit send on the email I had just drafted. It contained a forensic accounting of the last 6 months, transfers Kevin had disguised as consulting fees that went directly to an account registered to Natalie. Embezzlement, Arthur guessed. Grand larceny and fraud, I corrected. He used company funds to rent her an apartment before she got evicted. He bought her jewelry on the corporate Amex. It's all there. This changes things, Arthur said, and I could practically hear him smiling. This isn't just a divorce anymore. This is criminal. I'll have the paperwork for his termination ready for your signature by 8 Gao a.m. Good. One more thing. Freeze the joint accounts. Now. Consider it done. Isabella, are you safe there tonight? I'm locked in the office. They're too busy celebrating to bother me. I'm packing a bag and heading to the Ritz in an hour. I just need to move some money first. All right. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a bloodbath. I know, I said, looking at the red folder on my desk. I can't wait. I turned back to the glowing monitors. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold, clinical focus. This was what I did best. I managed crises. I moved assets. I won. My fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard, the click-clack sound satisfyingly loud in the silent office. First, I logged into our primary joint checking account at Chase. The balance was healthy, $45,000 and change. This was the operating account Kevin used for groceries, gas, and his networking dinners. Transfer funds. Amount, $45,200. Destination, Sterling Holdings, LLC Private. I clicked Confirm. The balance dropped to $1842. Good luck buying breakfast with that. Next, the savings. The rainy day fund, $120,000. Transfer. Confirm. Balance, 0.0. Then, the credit cards. This was the fun part. I pulled up the Amex Platinum portal. This was the card Kevin flashed everywhere, the one he used to buy bottle service when he thought I wasn't looking. Status, active. Action, report lost, stolen, freeze account. I confirmed the freeze. Somewhere in the Visa system, a digital gate slammed shut. The next time he tried to swipe that card, the machine would scream at him. I paused as a loud crash echoed from downstairs. It sounded like glass shattering against the tile floor. Oops, I heard Natalie shriek, followed by a peal of drunken laughter. Don't worry about it, babe, Kevin's voice boomed, slurring slightly. We'll buy new ones, better ones. That stuff was old anyway. I closed my eyes for a second. That old stuff was a limited edition Waterford crystal vase my grandmother had left me. It had survived 3 moves and 40 years. It hadn't survived 1 hour of Kevin's new life. I didn't storm downstairs. I didn't yell. I opened the smart home app on my desktop instead. I navigated to the thermostat settings. Downstairs zone current temp, 72 degrees. Action set to 62 degrees. Mode cool. I navigated to the Wi-Fi router settings. Device, Kevin's iPhone, 15 Pro Max. Action, block device. Device, Natalie's unknown device. Action, block device. Living room TV, Samsung 85. Action, parental control, internet access disabled. Downstairs, the music from Spotify abruptly cut out. Hey, Kevin yelled, what happened to the music? The Wi-Fi sucks in this big house, Natalie complained. We need to get extenders. I'll call the tech guys tomorrow, Kevin declared. I'll have them rewire the whole place. I smirked at the screen. You won't be calling anyone, Kevin. I opened one last tab. The security cameras. I disabled the interior recording, but kept the live feed on. I wanted to see them, but I didn't want a record of me leaving that could be twisted later. I watched them on the screen. They were in the living room now. Natalie was sitting on the arm of the sofa. my beige linen sofa, spilling red wine as she gestured wildly. Kevin was pacing, looking at the paintings on the walls like he was a curator deciding what to burn. "We should paint this room," Natalie said, pointing at the walls. "Something bright, like pink or lime green." "Whatever you want, Queen," Kevin said, bowing dramatically. I closed the laptop. The purge was complete. They had no money, no credit, no internet, and the temperature was dropping. I stood up and walked to the small closet in the corner of the office. I pulled out my Toomey carry-on. I didn't pack much. My laptop, the hard drives with the backups of the backups, my passport, a fresh change of clothes for tomorrow, my power suit, a charcoal Armani number that made me look like I owned the building I was walking into. I zipped the bag. It was light. My life, the one that mattered, fit into 22 inches of ballistic nylon. Everything else, the furniture, the art, the clothes in the master closet, was just inventory. And inventory could be liquidated. I unlocked the office door. The hallway was dark. I could see the flicker of the television from the living room downstairs. They must have switched to cable when the streaming died. I gripped the handle of my suitcase and walked softly toward the stairs. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was beating with a slow, heavy rhythm. Thud, thud, thud. As I reached the landing, I had a clear view of the living room. It was a disaster. In less than 2 hours, they had managed to trash it. Cushion pillows were on the floor. A pizza box, where did they get pizza, was open on the coffee table, grease soaking into the unfinished wood. Several empty beer bottles were clustered like bowling pins. Kevin was sprawled on the sofa, feet up on the table, shoes still on. Natalie was dancing, if you could call it that, to a commercial jingle on the TV, twirling my robe around her. I walked down the stairs. I didn't try to be quiet. My heels clicked on the wood. Kevin turned his head lazily. His eyes were glassy. "Oh, look who it is," he announced, gesturing with a half-eaten slice of pizza. "The ex-wife." Natalie stopped spinning and giggled, covering her mouth with her hand. "Going somewhere?" "Yes," I said, pausing at the bottom of the stairs. I kept my voice neutral. "I told you, I'm leaving. You wanted space? You've got it." "Aw," Natalie mocked. "Running away to Mommy and Daddy?" "My parents are dead, Natalie," I said coldly. "You know that." Right, she waved a hand. "Well, wherever. Just don't forget to leave the keys." "The keys are on the counter," I lied. They weren't. I had my set in my pocket. The spare set was in the safe. "Good," Kevin grunted. "Don't let the door hit you. And hey, Isabella." I stopped with my hand on the front door handle. "Yes, Kevin?" "Cancel the gardener for tomorrow," he said, picking a piece of pepperoni off his shirt. "I don't want anyone waking us up early." "We're sleeping in." "I'll take care of it," I said. "Enjoy your night." "We will," Natalie chirped. "This is the best night of my life." I opened the heavy oak door and stepped out into the humid Atlanta night. I closed it behind me with a solid click. I didn't look back. I walked to the garage, punched the keypad, and the door rolled up. The sight of Kevin's prized Dodge Challenger sitting there made me pause. I walked over to it. I ran my hand along the hood. It was cold. "Enjoy the garage, baby," I whispered to the car. "You're getting towed in 12 hours. I got into my Escalade, threw my bag in the passenger seat, and hit the ignition. The engine roared to life. I backed out, the reverse camera showing the house glowing warmly in the night. From the outside, it looked perfect. A dream home. Inside, it was a rotting carcass. I put the car in drive and sped toward the gate. As I passed the mailbox, I saw the reflection of the house in my rearview mirror one last time. "Goodbye, house," I said. "See you in the morning." The drive to downtown Atlanta took 20 minutes. I didn't listen to music. I drove in silence, processing the checklist in my head. Lawyer, confirmed. Security, confirmed. Movers, confirmed. Money, secure. I pulled into the circular driveway of the Ritz-Carlton. The valet, a young man named David, who knew me from corporate events, jogged over immediately. "Good evening, Mrs. Sterling," he said, opening my door. "Checking in? Just Isabella David. And yes, I'll need the car in the morning at 8 Tau a.m. sharp. Of course. Leave the keys. I'll take care of the bag." I walked into the lobby. The air here was different. It smelled of white tea and money. The chaos of the last 3 hours felt like a fever dream. Here, the marble floors were polished to a mirror shine, and the quiet was heavy and respectful. I approached the front desk. "Reservation for Isabella Sterling," I said to the concierge. "Ah, yes, Mrs. Sterling," the woman typed quickly. "We have the presidential suite prepared for you as requested by your assistant. We've stocked the fridge with sparkling water and fresh lemons." "Thank you." She handed me the key card. "Is there anything else we can get you tonight? A late dinner? A massage booking?" "No," I said, taking the card. "Just privacy. Absolute privacy. If anyone calls for me, anyone, tell them I'm not here." "Understood." I took the elevator to the top floor. The ride was smooth, silent. The doors opened to a private hallway. I scanned my card and entered the suite. It was massive, a living room bigger than my first apartment, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights, a bedroom with a king-size bed topped with a duvet that looked like a cloud. I dropped my purse on the console table and walked to the window. I looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, in the suburbs, Kevin and Natalie were probably stumbling upstairs, drunk and victorious. They were probably laughing about how easy it was to push me out. I stripped off my work clothes, the blouse that felt restrictive, the skirt that felt too tight. I took a long, hot shower, scrubbing the invisible film of the stew smell off my skin. I washed my hair twice. I wrapped myself in the hotel's thick, white robe, clean, crisp, smelling of nothing but detergent. I ordered a pot of herbal tea from room service. When it arrived, I sat in the armchair by the window, sipping the hot liquid. I checked my phone. 11:45 p.m. Arthur had sent a text. "Ops team briefed. We roll at 08:30. Get some sleep." I replied, "Ready." I crawled into the massive bed. The sheets were cool and smooth. I thought I would cry. I thought I would toss and turn, haunted by the image of my husband holding my sister. But I didn't. My body was exhausted, but my mind was clear. The grief was there, sitting heavy in my chest, but it was packaged away, stored in a box marked "Deal with Later." Right now, the only thing that mattered was the execution. I closed my eyes and fell asleep instantly. Sunlight streamed through the plantation shutters of the master bedroom, hitting Kevin squarely in the face. He groaned, rolling over and burying his face in the pillow. His head pounded. The cheap wine mixed with the craft beer was doing a number on his temples. His mouth tasted like old onions. He reached out an arm, expecting to feel the cold, empty space of the bed where Isabella usually wasn't. She was always up at 5 a.m. for yoga or emails. Instead, his hand hit warm skin. He opened one eye. Natalie was sprawled next to him, her mouth slightly open, snoring softly. She was still wearing the crimson robe, though it had slipped off one shoulder. Kevin smiled, a slow, groggy, satisfied smile. It wasn't a dream. He had actually done it. He had kicked out the Ice Queen. He sat up, stretching his arms over his head. The master bedroom, with its vaulted ceilings and the massive chandelier Isabella had imported from France, finally felt like his. For 5 years, he had felt like a guest in this room. He was afraid to touch things, afraid to leave a glass of water on the nightstand without a coaster. "Wakey, wakey," he whispered, poking Natalie in the ribs. She grumbled, batting his hand away. 5 more minutes. "It's 8:30, babe," Kevin said, looking at the clock. "The sun is shining. We're the kings of the castle." Natalie blinked her eyes open. She looked around, confused for a second, and then the memory hit her. She sat up, grinning. "Is she gone?" she asked, her voice raspy from sleep. "Her car wasn't in the driveway when I looked out the window last night," Kevin said, swinging his legs out of bed. "She must have bailed. Probably crying in her office parking lot." Natalie laughed, falling back onto the pillows. God, she's pathetic. All that money and she just folded. I told you she was weak. She needs people to like her too much. She needs control, Kevin corrected, standing up and scratching his stomach, and she finally realized she lost it. He walked to the window and threw the shutters open. The morning light flooded the room. He looked out at the manicured lawn, the winding driveway, the pool in the back. Mine, he whispered. All mine. Hey, Natalie called from the bed. Can we get breakfast? I'm starving. I think there's eggs in the fridge. I'll make you an omelet, Kevin promised. A victory omelet. And then maybe we go car shopping. You need something better than that Civic if you're going to be Mrs. Sterling number 2. Ooh, I want a Range Rover, Natalie squealed, kicking her legs. White, with tan interior. Done, Kevin said, filled with the confidence of a man who hasn't checked his bank account in 12 hours. Get dressed, or don't. He winked. Natalie giggled and pulled the robe tighter. I'm keeping this, by the way. It feels expensive. It is, Kevin said, but you make it look good. Come on, let's go downstairs. They didn't shower. They didn't brush their teeth. They just walked out of the master bedroom, radiating the smug, unearned confidence of thieves who think the security cameras were off. They padded down the hallway, Kevin in his boxers, Natalie in the stolen robe. It's so quiet, Natalie whispered. I love it. Yeah, Kevin agreed. Peaceful, no clicking heels, no conference calls, just us. They reached the top of the stairs. After breakfast, Kevin said, we need to clear out her office. I want to turn it into a man cave, big screen TV, pool table. And a bar, Natalie added, a wet bar. Absolutely, Kevin said. They descended the stairs, fantasizing about how they would spend Isabella's money, completely oblivious to the fact that the clock was ticking down the final seconds of their delusion. They turned the corner into the living room, expecting to see the mess they left the night before. They expected pizza boxes and beer bottles. Instead, the room was pristine. The pillows were fluffed. The pizza box was gone. The bottles had vanished. The rug looked like it had been vacuumed. And there, sitting in the center of the room on the beige linen sofa, legs crossed at the ankle, was me. I was wearing my armor. The charcoal Armani suit, a crisp white silk blouse, and black stilettos, sharp enough to puncture a tire. My hair was pulled back in a severe, flawless bun. My makeup was subtle but precise. I held a steaming mug of coffee, black, no sugar, in my hand. The cup rested on a coaster on the glass coffee table. Kevin froze mid-step. Natalie bumped into his back. Ow, watch it! She started. Then she saw me. Her mouth dropped open. Good morning, I said. My voice was calm, conversational. I took a sip of coffee. What are you doing here? Kevin stammered. He looked down at his boxers, suddenly realizing how naked he was. You said you were leaving. You said 24 hours. I did, I replied, setting the mug down with a soft clink. And my 24 hours are up. I checked my watch. Actually, I gave you a grace period. It's 9:02 a.m. So? Kevin tried to puff up his chest, but it was hard to look intimidating in underwear. That means you leave. Get your bag and get out. No, Kevin, I said, standing up slowly. I smoothed the front of my jacket. That means the transition period is over. Natalie stepped out from behind him, trying to muster some of her bratty courage. Stop playing games, Isabella. This is our house now. Kevin told you to leave. Why are you even cleaning? Are you the maid now? She laughed nervously, looking to Kevin for support. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She looked tragic. The robe was wrinkled and stained. Her hair was a bird's nest. Her eyes were puffy. You might want to put on some actual clothes, Natalie, I said. We have company coming. Company? Kevin frowned. Who? I didn't invite anyone. I did, I said, and they're very punctual. I don't care who you invited, Kevin yelled, his face turning red. I'm calling the police. I'm going to have you removed for trespassing. Go ahead, I challenged him. My phone is right there. I pointed to the side table. He stared at me, confused by my lack of fear. But before you do, I continued, you might want to check your bank account, or your email, or the front door. What are you talking about? Kevin took a step toward me, his fists clenched. Isabella, I swear to God, if you don't— My time is up, I repeated, my voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than a scream. But yours has just begun. Breakfast? I asked, gesturing to the kitchen. I'm afraid the kitchen is closed. Permanently. You're crazy, Natalie whispered. She's actually lost it. Get out, Kevin screamed, pointing at the door. Get out. Ding dong. The sound of the doorbell wasn't the soft melodic chime we usually had. It was a sharp, insistent buzz. Someone was leaning on the button. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Kevin jumped. He spun around to look at the door. Who the hell is that? He barked. Probably the police, Natalie said, clutching his arm. Maybe the neighbors called because of the yelling. Good, Kevin said, a manic grin spreading across his face. Good. I'll tell them everything. I'll tell them you're harassing us. He marched toward the door, dragging Natalie with him like a shield. He had the swagger of a man who believes his own lies. He thought he was the homeowner opening the door to a nuisance. I've got this. He threw back over his shoulder at me. I didn't move. I just watched. I counted down in my head. 3, 2, 1. Kevin ripped the door open. What is your prob? The words died in his throat. Standing on the porch wasn't a delivery driver. It wasn't a neighbor with a noise complaint. It was an army. Front and center stood Arthur Blackwood. He was wearing a navy pinstripe suit that cost more than Kevin's car. He held a leather briefcase in one hand and a tablet in the other. His expression was bored, like he was looking at a particularly uninteresting bug. Flanking him were 4 uniformed sheriff's deputies, their hands resting casually on their belts. Behind them were 6 large men in black polo shirts with Titan security embroidered on the chest. And parked in the driveway, blocking the exit, was a massive moving truck and a tow truck. Kevin took a step back, stumbling slightly. What? Who are you? Arthur stepped across the threshold without asking. He didn't look at Kevin. He looked past him, scanning the room until his eyes landed on me. He nodded respectfully. Mrs. Sterling, good morning. We are ready to proceed. Thank you, Arthur, I said. Kevin looked between us, his head swiveling like an owl. Mrs. Sterling, wait, hold on. You can't just walk in here. This is private property. Arthur stopped and finally looked at Kevin. He adjusted his glasses slowly. You are correct, Mr. Jones, Arthur said, his voice deep and resonant. It is private property, and the owner has requested your immediate removal. I am the owner, Kevin shrieked, his voice cracking. I'm her husband. This is my house. Isabella, he yelled, turning to me. Did you bring goons to my house? Are you trying to scare me? I walked forward slowly, my heels clicking on the floor. The security team parted to let me through. I stood next to Arthur, facing Kevin and Natalie. I'm not trying to scare you, Kevin, I said. Arthur handed me a thick red folder from his briefcase. I held it up. I'm trying to evict you. Kevin stared at the red folder in my hand like it was radioactive. He didn't reach for it. He just stood there, his chest heaving, his eyes darting between the sheriff's deputies and the document. What is that? He whispered. His voice had lost that booming, confident baritone he used to intimidate waitstaff. It was thin, reedy. This, I said, flipping the cover open with a snap, is the warranty deed for 4500 Peachtree Battle Avenue, recorded in the official records of Fulton County. I took a step closer, invading his personal space. He smelled of stale sweat and fear. Read the grantee line, Kevin. Read it out loud. He didn't move. He just glared at me, his jaw working. I know what it says, but we're married. Georgia is an equitable distribution state. Marital assets are split 50-50. I know my rights. Arthur cleared his throat. It was a dry, dismissive sound. Actually, Mr. Jones, Arthur interjected, stepping forward to stand beside me, while you are correct about equitable distribution regarding marital property, you seem to be confused about the definition of that term. Arthur opened his tablet, tapping the screen with a stylus. This property was acquired by Ms. Sterling 3 years prior to the marriage. It is categorized as separate property. Furthermore, no marital funds were used for the mortgage payments, as Ms. Sterling paid for the property in cash at the time of purchase. Therefore, the commingling exception does not apply. English! Kevin shouted, backing up until his legs hit the coffee table. Speak English, you bloodsucker! It means, I said, closing the folder, that you don't own a single brick of this house. You don't own the roof. You don't own the floor. You don't even own the air you're currently hyperventilating in. Natalie, who had been cowering behind Kevin, suddenly piped up. But we've lived here for 5 years. Common law, squatters' rights. You can't just throw us out. One of the deputies, a tall man with a buzz cut, snorted, trying to suppress a laugh. Ma'am, the deputy said, stepping forward, squatters' rights don't apply when you're a guest who's been asked to leave, and Georgia doesn't recognize common law marriage anymore. If your name isn't on the deed and the owner wants you gone, you're trespassing. Trespassing? Kevin looked around the room, his eyes wild. This is my home. My stuff is here. My life is here. Your life? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Your life was a lease, Kevin, and the lease has been terminated for cause. I turned to the deputies. Officers, I'd like these individuals removed from my property. They have been given notice. Wait! Kevin held up his hands. Wait. Okay, fine. You want to play hardball? Fine, we'll leave. But I'm taking my stuff. I'm taking everything that's mine. He turned to Natalie, grabbing her hand. Come on, we're going upstairs. We're packing our bags, and we're taking the artwork I picked out, and the TV. He started to push past Arthur toward the stairs. Arthur didn't move. He just extended his arm, creating a barrier. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Mr. Jones, Arthur said. Get out of my way, Kevin snarled. I have a right to my personal effects. We need to supervise, Arthur said calmly, to ensure that only personal effects are removed. Titan team, on me. 2 of the large security guards stepped forward. Escort them, Arthur ordered. Do not let them out of your sight. The procession up the stairs was pathetic. Kevin marched in front, trying to look dignified in his silk boxers, followed by Natalie in my robe, followed by Arthur, me, 2 deputies, and 2 security guards. We entered the master suite. The bed was still unmade, a testament to their betrayal. I averted my eyes from the sheets and focused on the walk-in closet. Kevin stormed into his side of the closet. It was massive. I had designed it for him. Rows of custom suits, shelves of Italian leather shoes, drawers full of cashmere sweaters. You think you can strip me of everything? Kevin muttered, grabbing a large suitcase from the top shelf. He threw it onto the floor. I'm the one who built my image. I'm the one who wore these suits to close deals. He grabbed a handful of hangers, pulling down 3 Armani suits at once. Stop, Arthur said. Kevin froze, the hangers clattering together. What now? Arthur looked at his tablet. Item, Giorgio Armani charcoal suit, purchased October 12, 2023, cost $3,200. Arthur looked up. Purchased with American Express ending in 4009. So, Kevin yelled, that's my card, the company card. Exactly, Arthur smiled. The company card. Registered to Sterling Vance Global. Per the company handbook, clothing purchases are considered personal expenses unless explicitly uniform. You never reimburse the company. Therefore, these suits are company property. As you have been terminated for cause, all company property must be returned. Kevin dropped the suits. They pooled on the floor. You're joking, he gasped. You're going to take the clothes off my back? Technically, I said, leaning against the door frame, those are on the floor, not your back. But yes. Kevin spun around, his eyes scanning the shelves. He lunged for a pair of alligator skin loafers. Item, Gucci loafers, Arthur recited, not missing a beat. Purchased July 2024. Payment method, Chase Joint Checking. Source of funds, transfer from Isabella Sterling Trust. Arthur looked at Kevin over the rim of his glasses. Marital asset purchased with separate funds. Mrs. Sterling is exercising her right to retain it. This is insane, Kevin screamed. He looked like a trapped animal. He grabbed a pile of T-shirts from a drawer. These are Hanes, pack of 3, $10. Did you buy these too, Isabella? Did you buy my underwear too? Actually, I said, I did. I put them in your stocking last Christmas. But you can keep them. I'm not cruel. Kevin threw the T-shirts into the suitcase. He looked around the closet that was once his pride and joy. It was full of things that made him look like a success. Without them, he was just a guy in his underwear. My watches, he breathed, his eyes lighting up. He ran to the velvet-lined drawer in the center island. You can't touch these. The Rolex, the Paytech, those were gifts. You gave them to me. Gifts remain the property of the recipient. He yanked the drawer open. It was empty. Kevin stared at the empty velvet slots. He looked up at me, his face pale. Where are they? Safe deposit box, I said calmly. Moved them 3 days ago, and regarding the gift status... Arthur? Arthur tapped his screen. According to the insurance writers, these watches are listed as investment assets of the Sterling Family Trust, not personal property. And since the trust is revocable and solely in Miss Sterling's name... Arthur shrugged. No TikTok for you. Kevin slumped against the island. He looked defeated. He looked small. So what do I have? He whispered. What do I actually own? That pile of T-shirts, Arthur pointed out, and the pajama pants you're wearing, although checking the records... Yes, Miss Sterling paid for those too, but we will consider them a severance package. While Kevin was having his existential crisis in the closet, I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. Natalie. She had been quiet, standing near the door, but while we were focused on Kevin's suits, she had drifted toward my vanity table in the bedroom. My jewelry box, a large antique wooden chest, was sitting there. I didn't say anything. I just watched. She glanced over her shoulder. Seeing our backs turned, she opened the lid. I saw the greed flare in her eyes as the morning light hit the diamonds. She didn't grab the whole box. That would be too obvious. She reached in and grabbed a handful of rings and a diamond tennis bracelet. She shoved them quickly into the deep pocket of the crimson robe. Then she reached for my pearl necklace, the Mikimoto strand my mother wore on her wedding day. She started to stuff it into the other pocket. "Excuse me," a sharp female voice cut through the room. It was one of the Titan security guards. I hadn't caught her name earlier, but her badge read, Officer Davis. She had been standing silently by the bedroom door, unnoticed by Natalie. Officer Davis stepped forward, her movement efficient and threatening. She grabbed Natalie's wrist mid-air, just as her hand was diving into the pocket. "Ow, you're hurting me!" Natalie shrieked, dropping the pearls. They clattered onto the hardwood floor. "Let go of her," Kevin yelled, snapping out of his stupor. He rushed out of the closet. "Don't touch her." Officer Davis didn't flinch. She twisted Natalie's arm behind her back, not enough to break it, but enough to immobilize her. "Subject is attempting to conceal assets," Davis announced calmly to Arthur. "I wasn't," Natalie cried, tears instantly springing to her eyes. "They're mine. Isabella gave them to me. She said I could borrow them." "Liar," I said, walking over. I picked up the pearls from the floor, checking them for scratches. "I wouldn't let you borrow a bobby pin, Natalie, let alone a $10,000 necklace." "Empty the pockets," Arthur ordered. "Now." Officer Davis released Natalie's arm but blocked her path. "Ma'am, empty the pockets, or I will do it for you. and I won't be gentle." Natalie stood there trembling. Her face was a mask of humiliation. Slowly, with shaking hands, she reached into the robe. She pulled out the tennis bracelet, then a sapphire ring, then 2 pairs of diamond studs. She dropped them onto the vanity table. Clink, clink, clink. "Thief," Kevin whispered, staring at Natalie. But he wasn't defending her. He looked disgusted. "You were stealing?" "I needed money," Natalie sobbed, turning on him. "You said we were rich. You said you had it handled. But look at you. You have nothing. How are we supposed to live?" "You don't steal from my sister in front of the police, you idiot," Kevin shouted. "Enough," I said. My voice was low, but it silenced them both. "Officer Davis, check the other pocket." Natalie froze. I emptied it." "Check it," I repeated. Davis stepped in and patted down the left pocket of the robe. She reached in and pulled out a small velvet pouch. She opened it and dumped the contents into her hand. It wasn't jewelry. It was a set of keys, my spare car keys, and a USB drive. I took the USB drive. It was the one I kept in my safe, the one with the encrypted passwords to my crypto wallets. "Strategic," I said, looking at Natalie with a newfound appreciation for her treachery. "You weren't just grabbing sparkles. You were going for the digital vault." "I hate you," Natalie hissed. "I hate you so much. You have everything and you won't share a dime." "I share with family," I said cold-heartedly. "You stopped being family the moment you climbed into my husband's bed." A loud, mechanical grinding noise drifted up from the driveway outside, the distinctive whir-clank of a heavy-duty hydraulic winch. Kevin's head snapped up. His eyes went wide, the pupils dilating in sheer panic. He knew that sound. He loved cars too much not to know that sound. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." He bolted. He didn't care about the guards. He didn't care about his lack of pants. He sprinted out of the bedroom, down the stairs, slipping and sliding in his socks. "Kevin!" Natalie screamed, running after him. We followed at a more leisurely pace. I wanted to savor this. By the time we got to the front porch, Kevin was already in the driveway. A massive flatbed tow truck was backed up to the garage. The driver, a burly guy with a beard, had already hooked the winch cable to the undercarriage of the red Dodge Challenger Hellcat. The car, Kevin's baby, was being slowly dragged backward out of the garage. "Stop!" Kevin screamed, waving his arms like a maniac. "Stop it! What are you doing?" He ran up to the tow truck driver, grabbing the man's arm. "That's my car. Unhook it. You're scratching the bumper." The driver swatted Kevin's hand away like he was a fly. "Back off, buddy. I got a repo order." "Repo? I don't owe any payments," Kevin yelled. He turned to me as I walked down the front steps. "Isabella, tell him I made every payment. I paid it from the joint account every month." "Actually," I said, reaching into the yellow folder Arthur handed me. I pulled out the title. "Since the car is in my name and the funds used to pay for it came from my account, which you just admitted, it's my car, and I don't want it anymore." You're selling it?" Kevin looked like he was about to vomit. "Selling it?" I laughed. "God, no. It smells like your cheap cologne. I'm donating it to a charity auction. All proceeds go to a women's shelter. Ironic, isn't it?" "You can't," Kevin sobbed. He actually fell to his knees on the asphalt. "Isabella, please. Not the car. Take the house. Take the money. But I built that engine. I customized the exhaust. It's me. That car is me." "Then watch yourself get towed away," I said. The winch whined louder. The Challenger was pulled up onto the flatbed, tilted at a steep angle. It looked like a dead beast being hauled off. The driver secured the chains. Clang. Clang. He hopped into the cab and started the engine. Kevin stayed on his knees, watching the truck rumble down the driveway. He looked broken. The car was his last symbol of masculinity, his last connection to the director persona. Now it was just a tax write-off on a flatbed. "Get up, Kevin," I said, my voice devoid of pity. "You're scraping your knees." "Time to go," Arthur announced, checking his watch. "The locks are being changed in 10 minutes. The deputies moved in. "Let's go, folks, off the property, now." Kevin stood up slowly. He was covered in dust from the driveway. He looked at me, his eyes red and swollen. "I have no clothes," he rasped. "I'm in my underwear, Isabella. You can't throw me out on the street in my underwear." "I can," I said, "but lucky for you, I'm feeling generous." I pointed to the small duffel bag the movers had placed on the porch. It contained the T-shirts and the few pairs of jeans we had determined were actually his. "There's your bag. You can change at the gas station down the road." Then I turned to Natalie. She was shivering, clutching the crimson robe tight around her. "And you," I said. "That robe." "I have nothing else," she cried. "My clothes are in the laundry. You locked the laundry room." "That robe," I continued, ignoring her, "is silk. It's custom, and it's mine. Take it off." "What?" Her eyes bulged. "Here? Outside? You want me to be naked?" "No," I said. "I prepared a care package for you." I reached behind a planter on the porch and pulled out a white plastic grocery bag, the thin, crinkly kind that screams, "cheap." I tossed it at her feet. It landed with a soft thwack. "What is this?" she asked, staring at it. "Open it." She bent down and ripped the bag open. She pulled out a dress. It was a floral print, shapeless sack made of polyester. I had bought it at a 24-hour discount superstore at 2 a.m. the night before. It cost $12.99. It was hideous. Next to it fell a pair of bright yellow rubber flip-flops, $2.50. "Put it on," I ordered. "I'm not wearing this trash," Natalie screamed. "I look like a peasant." "It suits you," I said. "Now give me my robe, or I'll have Officer Davis take it from you. Your choice." Natalie looked at Officer Davis, who cracked her knuckles. Defeated, Natalie stepped behind the large stone pillar of the porch to shield herself. We waited. A moment later, she emerged. The transformation was startling. Gone was the wannabe trophy wife. In the cheap, ill-fitting floral dress and the squeaky yellow flip-flops, she looked exactly like what she was, a mess. She threw the crimson robe onto the ground. It pooled like spilled blood. "Happy," she spat. "Ecstatic," I said. "Guard, burn that robe." A guard stepped forward, picked up the silk robe with a pair of tongs, as if it were contaminated, and dropped it into a heavy-duty trash bag. "Escort them to the gate," I commanded. The walk down the driveway was a quarter-mile long. In the car, it took 30 seconds. On foot, under the scorching Georgia morning sun, it felt like a death march. Arthur and I stayed on the porch, watching, but the deputies and the security team flanked Kevin and Natalie, marching them toward the main road. Our neighborhood, Tuxedo Park, was not the kind of place where people made scenes. It was the kind of place where lawns were manicured with scissors and neighbors communicated via polite notes on thick stationery. But it was Saturday morning. The joggers were out. The couples walking their golden retrievers were out. The landscapers were out. As the iron gates of my estate swung open, Kevin and Natalie were pushed out onto the public sidewalk. They were a spectacle. Kevin, shirtless, dusty, carrying a pathetic duffel bag, his silk boxers visible above the waistband of the jeans he had hastily pulled on in the driveway. Natalie, in a hideous polyester floral sack, sobbing, shuffling in yellow rubber flip-flops. A woman I knew from the HOA board, Mrs. Higgins, was walking her poodle. She stopped dead in her tracks. She lowered her sunglasses. Kevin tried to hide his face, turning away, but there was nowhere to hide. "Kevin?" Mrs. Higgins asked, loud enough for us to hear from the porch. "Is everything all right?" "Don't look at me," Kevin yelled at her, his voice cracking. "Just keep walking, you old bat." Mrs. Higgins gasped and immediately pulled out her phone. The neighborhood group chat was about to explode. A group of cyclists in spandex slowed down, gawking at the couple being ejected from the mansion. Natalie tried to cover her face with her hands, but the yellow flip-flops made a loud slap, slap, slap sound on the pavement, drawing even more attention. The security guard stopped at the property line. They formed a wall. One of the deputies pointed down the road. "Move along. If you step 1 foot back onto this driveway, you will be arrested." Kevin stood there for a moment, looking back at the house. He looked at me, standing on the porch, a tiny figure in the distance. I raised my coffee cup in a mock toast. He turned around, defeated. He grabbed Natalie's arm roughly. "Come on," he snapped. "Let's go." "Where?" Natalie wailed. "Where are we going?" "Away from here," Kevin growled. I watched as the heavy iron gates began to close automatically. The gears whirred. The black metal bars swung shut, slowly eclipsing the view of my ex-husband and my ex-sister. Clang. The lock engaged. They were gone. The silence that followed was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. You might be wondering how I know what happened after the iron gates of my estate slammed shut, locking Kevin and Natalie out of paradise. Did I hire a private investigator? Did I plant a bug in that cheap floral dress? No, I didn't have to. When you file a high-profile civil suit for fraud and embezzlement combined with criminal charges, everything becomes evidence. I have the Uber driver's dash cam footage. I have the deposition from my mother-in-law. I have the security tapes from the office lobby. I have pieced together their downfall minute by pathetic minute, and let me tell you, it was a masterclass in karma. It started in the back of a beat-up Toyota Camry Uber. They had managed to hail one using the last $20 of emergency cash Kevin had stuffed in his jeans pocket weeks ago, money he had ironically hidden from me to buy cigars. The dashcam video is grainy, but the audio is crystal clear. Kevin is shirtless, sweating profusely, sitting on the sticky vinyl seat. Natalie is next to him, picking at the loose threads of the $12.99 polyester dress. "Can you turn the AC up?" Kevin barked at the driver. "It smells like wet dog in here." "AC is broken, bro," the driver replied, not even looking back. "Windows open." Kevin slammed his hand against the door panel. "Unbelievable. Yesterday I was driving a Hellcat. Today I'm in a sauna on wheels." "This is your fault," Natalie whispered. It started low, a hiss of venom. Kevin turned to look at her. "My fault? You're the one who got caught stealing jewelry. You're the one who couldn't keep her hands out of the cookie jar for 5 minutes. I wouldn't have had to steal if you had actually secured the bag," Natalie screamed, her voice cracking. "You told me she was weak. You told me she was a pushover. Oh, Isabella just wants to be loved. She'll never fight back. You idiot. She's a shark. She deceived me," Kevin yelled back, ignoring the driver who was eyeing them nervously in the rearview mirror. "She hid her assets. Who puts a house in a trust? Who does that?" "Smart people," Natalie retorted. "People who know they married a loser. I gave up my apartment for this, Kevin. I gave up my lease. I have nowhere to go. I'm wearing yellow rubber flip-flops, Kevin. Look at my feet." She slapped her foot against the floor mat. Thwack. "Shut up about the flip-flops," Kevin roared. "I'm the director of operations. Do you know how humiliating this is? I'm shirtless in a Camry." "You're not a director anymore," Natalie sneered. "Didn't you hear the lawyer? Terminated for cause. You're unemployed. You're homeless. You're nothing." Kevin grabbed her wrist. The driver shouted, "Hey, no touching, or you get out right here." Kevin released her, shoving her away. He ran a hand over his face, smearing dirt and sweat across his forehead. "We're going to my mom's," he muttered. "She'll help. She hates Isabella. She'll take us in. We'll regroup. We'll sue for wrongful termination. I'll get it all back." "Your mom?" Natalie scoffed. "The woman who thinks I'm trash?" "She's family," Kevin insisted. "Family sticks together, unlike you and your psychotic sister." The Uber dropped them off in Marietta, at a nice, sensible brick ranch house with a manicured lawn. This was the house I bought. I paid the down payment. I paid the monthly mortgage. I even paid for the hydrangeas lining the walkway. Kevin, of course, had told his mother that he bought it for her as a token of his success. I know what happened next because Mrs. Jones, my former mother-in-law, recounted it in vivid, angry detail during her deposition when the state seized the house. Kevin pounded on the door. Bang, bang, bang. Ma, open up. It's an emergency. Inside, Mrs. Jones was watching her soaps. She waddled to the door expecting a package. When she opened it and saw her golden boy shirtless, dirty, and holding a duffel bag, with that woman standing behind him, looking like a vagrant, her jaw dropped. "Kevin," she gasped. "Lord have mercy, what happened? Were you robbed? Where's the car?" "Let us in, Ma." Kevin pushed past her, dragging Natalie into the air-conditioned hallway. "We need water. We need a place to stay." Mrs. Jones followed them into the living room. "What is going on? Why is she wearing a tablecloth?" "Isabella went crazy," Kevin said, collapsing onto the sofa, a sofa I paid for. "She kicked us out. She brought the police. She seized everything. The house, the cars, my accounts. She left us on the street, Ma. She's a monster." Natalie started crying, the fake heaving sobs she used to manipulate people. "She was so cruel, Mrs. Jones. She threw my clothes in the trash. She made us walk." Mrs. Jones stood in the center of the room. She didn't rush to get them water. She didn't hug her son. Her eyes narrowed. "She seized the accounts?" Mrs. Jones asked, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Which accounts, Kevin?" "All of them." Kevin threw his hands up. "The joint, the savings, even the company cards." Mrs. Jones's face went from concerned to terrified to furious in the span of 3 seconds. "The company cards?" she repeated. The one you used to pay my mortgage?" "Yeah, Ma, everything is frozen," Kevin said, oblivious to the shift in the room. "But don't worry, we can stay here until I sue her. We'll sleep in the guest room." Smack. The sound echoed off the walls. Mrs. Jones had backhanded Kevin across the face with a force that rocked his head back. Kevin held his cheek, stunned. "Ma, what the hell?" "You idiot!" Mrs. Jones screamed, shaking with rage. "You stupid, arrogant little fool. You let her freeze the money?" "It's not my fault," Kevin whined. "She's the one who—" "Shut up!" Mrs. Jones yelled. She turned on Natalie. "And you! I told him not to mess with the goose that lays the golden eggs. But no, you had to get greedy. You had to parade around in her face." "Mom, what are you talking about?" Kevin asked, confused. "I thought you hated Isabella. You always said she was bossy and stuck up." "I hated her personality, Kevin," Mrs. Jones shouted, poking him in the chest. "I didn't hate her checkbook. Who do you think pays for this house? Who sends the transfer every month? You?" She laughed, a harsh barking sound. "You can't even pay your own phone bill. Isabella pays for this. She pays for my arthritis medication. She pays for the cable TV." Kevin blinked. "But you said you were proud of me. You said I was the provider." "I was proud that you tricked a rich woman into marrying you," Mrs. Jones spat. "I was proud you secured the bag. And now you've dropped the bag, set it on fire, and brought the ashes into my living room." The realization hit Kevin like a physical blow. He looked at his mother, the woman who had always coddled him, always told him he was a king, and saw the truth. She was just another parasite, terrified that her host was dying. "So that's it?" Kevin whispered. "It's all about the money?" "It's always about the money, stupid," Mrs. Jones snapped. She looked around the room frantically. "If she froze your assets, she's coming for this house next. It's in her name, isn't it? The deed is in her name?" I think so," Kevin stammered. "I told her to put it in yours, but she said something about taxes." "Oh, Lord," Mrs. Jones grabbed her chest. "I'm going to be homeless, at my age, because of you." She looked at them with pure, unadulterated disgust. Kevin in his dirty jeans, Natalie in her flea market dress. "Get out," she said. "What?" Natalie squeaked. "Mrs. Jones, please. We have nowhere else. We have no money." "Does this look like a homeless shelter?" Mrs. Jones shrieked. I have to figure out how to save myself. I have to call Isabella. Maybe if I tell her I had nothing to do with this, maybe if I tell her I hate you. You're going to sell me out? Kevin stood up, betrayed. I'm your son. You're a liability. Mrs. Jones marched to the front door and threw it open. The heat from outside blasted into the cool hallway. Out, both of you, before she sends the police here too and thinks I'm harboring fugitives. Ma, please, Kevin begged, walking toward her. Just one night. Just let us shower. No. Mrs. Jones grabbed a broom from the corner, literally a broom, and swatted at them. Get out. You bring bad luck. You bring poverty. I don't want your poverty rubbing off on my furniture. She chased them onto the porch. She didn't even let them keep the water she hadn't offered. And don't come back, she yelled, waving the broom. Don't come back until you fix this. Go beg her, get on your knees, fix my money. Slam. The door shook in its frame. The deadbolt clicked. For the second time in 4 hours, Kevin and Natalie stood on a porch, staring at a closed door. I can't believe this, Natalie whispered, staring at the closed door. Your own mother. Kevin didn't say anything. He just stared at the wood grain, his face burning from the slap, his heart burning from the betrayal. Come on, he said finally, his voice hollow. Where now? Natalie cried. Downtown, Kevin said, turning away. To the office. They walked. They didn't have money for another Uber. They managed to sneak onto a city bus by slipping in the back door while a crowd was exiting, ignoring the driver's shouts. But the bus only got them so far. They had to walk the last 10 blocks to the financial district. It was noon in Atlanta. The humidity was 90%. The pavement was radiating heat like a grill. Kevin was shirtless. The sun beat down on his shoulders, turning his skin a painful shade of pink. He was sweating so much his jeans were dark with moisture. Natalie was worse. The rubber flip-flops were blistering her feet. She was limping. The polyester dress didn't breathe. It trapped the heat like a plastic bag. I'm thirsty, Natalie croaked. Her lips were cracked. Kevin, I need water. I'm going to pass out. We're almost there, Kevin muttered, marching forward with a zombie-like determination. The office has water. The break room has those sparkling waters you like. And snacks. We just need to get to the office. What are you going to do at the office? Natalie asked, hobbling to keep up. You're fired, Kevin. It's a mistake, Kevin insisted, clinging to his last delusion. Arthur is just a lawyer. He doesn't run the company. I run operations. The staff loves me. Once I get in there, explain the situation. I can get an advance, a cash advance on my severance. They owe me that. He stopped at a crosswalk waiting for the light. People in business suits, people he used to be, stepped away from him, wrinkling their noses. He smelled of fear, old sweat, and the onion-scented stew from the night before that still lingered in his pores. Look at them, Kevin whispered, glaring at a man in a crisp blue suit. They think they're better than me. I bought suits like that yesterday. I have a Patek Philippe watch. He looked at his naked wrist. There was only a tan line where the watch used to be. Kevin, people are staring, Natalie hissed. Cover yourself. With what? Kevin snapped. My imaginary jacket? His stomach growled, a loud, angry rumble. He hadn't eaten since lunch yesterday. The smell of a hot dog cart on the corner hit him, and he almost fell over from the hunger pangs. Do you have any change? He asked Natalie. I have a dress and flip-flops, Kevin. Where would I put change? Fine, Kevin gritted his teeth. We're going in. Just look. Try to look confident. Walk like you belong there. I look like a swamp creature, Natalie cried. Just walk. Sterling Vance Global was located on the 40th floor of one of the most prestigious glass towers in downtown. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and chrome, cooled to a crisp 68 degrees. Kevin pushed through the revolving doors. The blast of cold air felt like heaven. He closed his eyes for a second, inhaling the scent of expensive HVAC systems. Then he opened his eyes and remembered he was half naked. He marched toward the security desk, dragging Natalie behind him. He tried to summon the director walk, that arrogant chest-out strut he used to terrorize interns. But it's hard to strut when your sneakers are untied and your gut is hanging over your waistband. "Jessica," Kevin called out to the receptionist, a young woman with braided hair who was typing on her computer. "Jessica, I need a visitor pass. I left my badge at home." Jessica looked up. Her eyes went wide. She stopped typing. She looked at Kevin, then at Natalie, then back at Kevin. "Mr. Jones?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes, it's me," Kevin said, leaning on the high desk, leaving sweaty handprints on the polished stone. "Look, I'm having a hell of a day, crazy story. I need access to the executive elevator. And call HR, tell them to meet me in my office with a checkbook." Jessica didn't move to print a badge. She slowly stood up, backing away from the desk slightly. "Sir," she said, her voice dropping to a pitying whisper, You can't go up." "Don't give me that," Kevin snapped, his patience fraying. "I know the lawyer sent some email, but it's a misunderstanding. I'm the director. Now badge me in." "Sir, please," Jessica said, looking around nervously. "You're making a scene. You need shoes and a shirt." "I don't need a shirt to run this company," Kevin yelled, his voice echoing off the marble walls. "I built this place. Where is everyone? Where is Mike from accounting? Where is Steve?" Two large security guards, building security, not my private team, started walking briskly across the lobby toward them. "Sir, step away from the desk," the lead guard ordered. "Don't touch me." Kevin spun around. "Do you know who I am? I'm Kevin Jones. I signed the checks for this floor." "Not anymore, buddy," the guard said, reaching for his radio. "We got a code gray in the lobby, disturbance at the front desk." "Code gray?" Kevin laughed hysterically. "I'm the boss. I'm the victim here. My wife is crazy." Natalie tugged on his arm. "Kevin, look." She pointed a trembling finger toward the massive digital media wall behind the reception desk. Usually it displayed stock tickers or weather. Today it was displaying a static image. Kevin turned. He followed Natalie's finger. The screen was 20 feet wide, and right in the center, in high-definition resolution, was his face. It was his corporate headshot, the one he had spent $500 retouching to make his jawline look sharper. But superimposed over it in bold red block letters was the word terminated. Below it was a text crawl that I had drafted personally at 4 a.m. Official notice. Kevin Jones has been removed from his position as Director of Operations effective immediately due to gross misconduct and embezzlement of company funds. Mr. Jones is permanently banned from all Sterling Vance premises. If seen, do not approach. Contact law enforcement immediately. Kevin's knees buckled. He stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Embezzlement," he whispered. She put it on the billboard? For the whole lobby? Every person in the lobby, couriers, executives from other firms, the guys from the coffee shop, was staring at the screen and then at the shirtless man standing beneath it. The connection was made. The whispers started. "That's him. That's the guy who stole the money. Look at him. He looks like a junkie. It's a lie!" Kevin screamed at the room, spinning in a circle. "She's lying. It was my money. I earned it." "Mr. Jones?" The voice came from the main entrance. Kevin turned. 2 Atlanta police officers were walking in, flanked by Arthur Blackwood. Arthur looked cool, calm, and collected. He pointed a finger at Kevin. "That's him, officers." "Kevin Jones?" the officer asked, hand resting on his handcuffs. "No." Kevin backed up, bumping into the reception desk. "No, wait, I can explain. It's a civil matter." "We have a warrant for your arrest," the officer said, stepping forward. "Charges of grand larceny, wire fraud, and corporate embezzlement. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." "No!" Kevin lunged, trying to run toward the elevators, thinking he could... What? Hide in the ceiling tiles? The security guards tackled him instantly. He hit the marble floor with a sickening thud. "Get off me!" he screamed, his face pressed against the cold stone. "Isabella, I know you're watching. Stop this!" The officer knelt on his back, wrenching his arms behind him. Click, click. The handcuffs were tight. Kevin was hauled to his feet, panting, bleeding from a cut on his lip. He looked at Arthur. "Help me, man. Call Isabella. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I'll sign whatever she wants." Arthur adjusted his cuffs. "She knows, Kevin. She sent the police." Kevin let out a sob that broke into a wail. Natalie stood frozen to the side, watching the man she had bet her entire life on being dragged away in cuffs, shirtless and weeping. The crowd was filming with their phones. She looked at the screen. Terminated. She looked at Kevin. The stress, the heat, the lack of food, and the sheer terror of the moment finally hit her. Her eyes rolled back in her head. "Kevin," she whispered. And then she dropped like a stone, collapsing onto the hard lobby floor in a heap of polyester flowers and yellow rubber. Arthur looked down at her unconscious form. He didn't rush to help. He simply turned to Jessica. "Call an ambulance for the lady," he said dryly, "and send the bill to Mr. Jones's forwarding address, assuming he has one." 2 days after the arrest, I returned to the house. I didn't unlock the door myself. I had a hazmat team do it. Okay, maybe not hazmat in the radioactive sense, but I hired a specialized forensic cleaning crew, the kind usually reserved for crime scenes. Because as far as I was concerned, a crime had been committed in every room. The smell of industrial-strength disinfectant hit me the moment I stepped into the foyer. It was sharp, chemical, and absolutely beautiful. It smelled like a blank slate. Mrs. Sterling, the crew foreman, a no-nonsense woman named Brenda, walked up to me wearing blue protective booties over her shoes. We finished the deep clean, steam cleaned the carpets, scrubbed the grout, sanitized the HVAC ducts. "And the furniture?" I asked, looking at the empty space in the living room where the beige sofa used to be. "Gone," Brenda nodded. "As requested. The donation truck took the dining set and the guest room furniture, but the items you marked as contaminated? The master bed," I clarified. "The sofa, the rug in the kitchen." "Incinerated," she said. "We paid the disposal fee for immediate destruction. You won't see them again." I walked into the living room. It was cavernous without the furniture. The echo of my heels was the only sound. I went upstairs to the master bedroom. It was empty. The king-sized bed frame, the mattress, the nightstands, everything Kevin and Natalie had touched was gone. The room was just 4 walls and a hardwood floor. I walked to the center of the room and closed my eyes. For the last 48 hours, I had been running on adrenaline and rage. Now, standing in the empty space where my marriage had died, I waited for the sadness to hit. I waited for the tears, but they didn't come. Instead, I felt lighter. The heaviness in my chest, the constant anxiety of trying to please a man who was never satisfied, it had all evaporated with the smell of bleach. "Paint it," I said aloud. Brenda, who had followed me up, paused. "Ma'am?" "I want this room painted," I turned to her. "Dark navy, pale navy, with gold accents, and turn it into a library. I never want to sleep in this room again. I want floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. I want a ladder. I want a leather armchair." "A library," Brenda smiled. "Sounds peaceful." "It's not about peace," I said, walking out of the room. "It's about intelligence, something this house has been lacking for 5 years. The following Monday, I walked into the Sterling Vance Global Boardroom. The atmosphere was thick with tension. The news of Kevin's arrest had been splashed across every business blog in Atlanta. The stock had dipped 4% on Friday. The sharks were circling, waiting for the scorned wife to crumble under the pressure. They didn't know I was the one who chummed the water. I walked in at 9 a.m. sharp. I wasn't wearing my usual soft power pastels. I was wearing a black dress with a sharp architectural neckline. "Good morning," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table, the seat Kevin used to try to usurp, always putting his chair slightly ahead of mine. 12 pairs of eyes stared at me. The board of directors. Mostly older men who had always viewed me as the creative and Kevin as the operator. Let's address the elephant in the room. I opened my leather folio. The former director of operations is currently being held without bail at the Fulton County Jail. His employment has been terminated. His equity has been clawed back. A murmur went through the room. Isabella. George, the oldest board member, leaned forward. This is unfortunate. But Kevin was the face of our logistics. Without him, I interrupted, pressing a button on the console. We have saved $1.2 million in annual miscellaneous overhead. Without him, we have eliminated 3 redundant vendors that were actually shell companies funneling money to his personal accounts. The screen behind me lit up. I didn't show them the scandal. I showed them the numbers. This is the expansion plan, I said. Project Phoenix, while Mr. Jones was busy networking. I have been acquiring supply chains in Savannah and Charleston. I spent the next hour dismantling every doubt they had. I presented the data without looking at a single note. I showed them that Kevin wasn't the engine of the company. He was the parking brake, and I had finally released it. When I finished, the room was silent. Then a slow clap started from the far end of the table. It was Marcus Vance. Marcus was new to the board, a venture capitalist from Chicago who had bought in 6 months ago. He was quiet, observant, and frankly, intimidating. He had dark eyes that missed nothing. Brilliant, Marcus said, his voice deep and steady. He stood up. I'd been reviewing the logs for months. I knew someone was bleeding the company, but I couldn't pin it on Kevin until you sent the forensic report. I was ready to pull my funding. He looked at me, and for the first time, it wasn't a professional gaze. It was admiration. But this, he gestured to the screen, this is leadership. I'm doubling my investment, on one condition. And what is that, Mr. Vance? I asked, keeping my face neutral. That you take the title of sole CEO, he said. No more co-director. You run this ship. We just fuel it. The board murmured in agreement. Motion carried, George said. I looked at Marcus. He nodded slightly. In that moment, I realized that while I had lost a husband, I had gained something much more valuable: respect. Arthur walked into my new office, formerly Kevin's office, which I had stripped of its tacky sports memorabilia and repainted a crisp white. Status report, I said, not looking up from my laptop. He's been arraigned, Arthur said, sitting down uninvited. The judge denied bail. Flight risk, given the overseas accounts we uncovered. Good. And the assets? We've recovered about 60%, Arthur said. The house in Marietta, your mother-in-law's place, is in foreclosure. The state seized it yesterday. Mrs. Jones is currently staying with her sister in a 1-bedroom apartment in Decatur. She's been calling my office non-stop, claiming she's a victim. Block her number, I said. What about the other one? Natalie. Arthur hesitated. He shifted in his chair. That's a bit more complicated. After she collapsed in the lobby, the ambulance took her to Grady Memorial. She was treated for dehydration and exhaustion. Arthur paused. Isabella, they ran blood work. She's pregnant. My fingers stopped typing. The silence in the office was heavy. Pregnant, I repeated. About 8 weeks along, Arthur confirmed, which puts conception right around the time you were in London for the merger, when Kevin said he was working late on the budget. I closed my eyes. A baby, a child created in my bed, while I was building the empire that fed them. Does Kevin know? I asked. His lawyer told him this morning. Kevin apparently started crying. He thinks this might help his case, a family man plea. It won't, I said, opening my eyes. It just makes him a father in prison. Natalie has been discharged, Arthur continued. She has nowhere to go. Her mother won't take her. Kevin's mother won't take her. She's currently at a temporary women's shelter downtown. She tried to reach out to you. She left a voicemail on the main line." "Delete it," I said instantly. "Isabella," Arthur softened his tone. "There is a child involved, a blood relative." I looked at Arthur. "That child is an innocent victim of two selfish people. But I am not a charity, Arthur. I am not the safety net for their wreckage. If I help her now, she will never learn. She will drain me until I am dry, just like he did." "So, the answer is no?" "The answer is silence," I said, turning back to my screen. "Let the system handle them. I have a company to run." 6 months later, the day of the sentencing arrived. I sat in the front row, not as a weeping wife, but as the primary witness for the prosecution. The courtroom was packed. Kevin's downfall was the juiciest scandal Atlanta had seen in years. When the bailiffs brought him in, I almost didn't recognize him. The Kevin I knew was obsessed with appearances: hair plugs, spray tans, tailored suits. The man in the orange jumpsuit was gray. His hair was thinning rapidly without his treatments. He had lost 20 pounds. He looked hollow. He scanned the room, his eyes desperate. When they landed on me, he lit up. "Isabella," he mouthed. He actually tried to smile, a pathetic, trembling grimace. I didn't smile back. I looked through him, focusing on the seal of the state of Georgia on the wall behind the judge. The trial was swift. The evidence Arthur and I had compiled was bulletproof. The forensic accounting was a masterpiece of incrimination. When I took the stand, Kevin's public defender tried to paint me as a vindictive ex-wife. "Isn't it true, Mrs. Sterling, that you froze the accounts out of spite?" "I froze the accounts to prevent further theft," I answered calmly into the microphone. "And considering Mr. Jones attempted to wire $50,000 to a Cayman Islands account, after I served him the divorce papers, I'd say my caution was warranted." Kevin put his head in his hands. When it was time for sentencing, the judge, a stern woman with zero tolerance for white-collar crime, looked over her glasses at Kevin. "Mr. Jones, you had everything: a successful wife, a high-paying job, a life of privilege, and you chose to steal. You chose to defraud. You chose to mock the very person who elevated you." "I'm sorry, Your Honor," Kevin wept. "I just wanted to be the man of the house. I wanted respect." "Respect is earned, Mr. Jones," the judge said. "It is not embezzled." She brought the gavel down. "I sentence you to 10 years in federal prison, restitution of $4.5 million to be paid to Sterling Vance Global. Following your release, you will serve 5 years of probation." 10 years, Kevin wailed. It was a guttural, animal sound. As the bailiffs hauled him up, he lunged toward the gallery. "Isabella, help me! 10 years! I can't do 10 years! I'll die in there!" He was dragged past me. He reached out a hand, his fingers grasping at the air, inches from my face. "Isabella, please, I love you!" I didn't flinch. I watched him get dragged through the side door. The door clicked shut. And just like that, the noise stopped. I felt a hand on my shoulder. I looked up. Marcus was standing there. He had come to every day of the trial, sitting silently in the back row. "Are you okay?" he asked. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. "I'm excellent. Lunch? I'm starving." Update 1 year later. The grand ballroom of the Four Seasons, Washington, D.C. was a sea of black ties and designer gowns. The air smelled of expensive perfume and fresh orchids. I stood at the podium, the lights blinding me slightly. I was wearing emerald green, the color of money, yes, but also the color of rebirth. "Thank you all for coming," I spoke into the microphone. My voice didn't shake. When I founded the Phoenix Foundation last year, I did it with a simple mission: to help women rebuild their lives after financial and emotional abuse. Applause rippled through the room. I learned the hard way that financial independence is the only true security. I continued. Tonight, we have raised over $5 million to provide legal aid and housing for women who are told they have nowhere to go. I looked down at the front row. Marcus was there. He winked at me. We weren't married. I wasn't rushing into that again, but we were partners, in every sense. He respected my power. He didn't try to steal it. The gala was a triumph. As the speeches ended and the music began, I circulated the room, shaking hands with senators and CEOs. I was in my element. I was the queen, and this was my court. Around 10 p.m., I was standing near the entrance, laughing at a joke Marcus had made, when I saw a commotion at the security checkpoint. "Please," a woman's voice rose above the jazz music. "I just need to see her, please." I froze. I knew that voice. It was raspy, broken, but familiar. "Is everything all right?" Marcus asked, stepping closer to me protectively. "Wait here," I said. I walked toward the entrance. The security guards were blocking a woman. She was thin, skeletal almost. She was wearing a cheap, oversized coat that looked like it came from a donation bin. Her hair was dull and matted, and in her arms she held a bundle wrapped in a gray blanket. "Natalie," I said. The guards parted. Natalie looked up. Her eyes were sunken, rimmed with red. She looked 20 years older than she was. "Isabella," she whispered. She fell to her knees, right there on the marble floor of the Four Seasons. "Oh God, Isabella." The music seemed to stop. The guests nearby fell silent, staring at the woman kneeling in front of the woman of the hour. "What are you doing here, Natalie?" I asked. My voice wasn't angry, it was just tired. "I saw the flyer," she sobbed, clutching the bundle. "The Phoenix Foundation, helping women, helping mothers." She pulled the blanket back. A baby boy, maybe 6 months old, stared up with wide, fearful eyes. He looked like Kevin. The resemblance was haunting. "He's hungry, Isabella," Natalie cried. "We live in a shelter in Baltimore, but they kick us out during the day. It's so cold. I can't feed him." She reached out a dirty hand to grab the hem of my emerald dress. I took a step back. "Don't," I said. "Please," she begged, putting her forehead on the floor. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I'm trash. I know I deserve this, but he doesn't. He's your nephew." I looked at the baby. He was innocent. He didn't ask to be born to a thief and a traitor. I looked at Natalie. She was broken, truly, completely broken. The arrogance was gone, ground into dust by the reality I had introduced her to. I opened my clutch. I pulled out my checkbook and a Mont Blanc pen. I wrote a check. I didn't write it for $1 million. I wrote it for $50,000. Enough for an apartment, food, and a fresh start. Not enough to live in luxury. I ripped the check out. "Stand up," I commanded. Natalie scrambled to her feet, trembling. I held the check out, but I didn't let go when she grabbed it. "Listen to me very carefully," I said, my voice low enough that only she could hear. "This money is not for you, it is for the boy. If I find out you spend a dime of this on anything other than his welfare, I will call Child Protective Services and have him taken away so fast your head will spin. Do you understand?" "Yes," she wept. "Yes, I promise." "And one more thing," I said, leaning in close. "This is it. The end. You do not contact me. You do not use my name. You do not show up at my events. As far as you are concerned, Isabella Sterling died the night you put on her robe." I let go of the check. "Now go." Natalie clutched the check to her chest like it was a holy relic. Thank you, sister." "I'm not your sister," I said coldly. "I'm the stranger who just saved your life. Goodbye, Natalie." She turned and ran, stumbling out the door into the cold D.C. night, disappearing into the darkness. I stood there for a moment, watching the door swing shut. Marcus walked up beside me. He didn't ask questions. He just slipped his arm through mine. "Ready to go back in?" he asked. I took a deep breath. I looked at the ballroom, filled with light and music and people who respected me. "Yes," I said, turning my back on the door and the past. "I'm ready." Update. It's been 3 months since that night. I haven't heard from Natalie, but my lawyer confirmed she rented a small apartment and enrolled in a vocational school. Kevin is currently assigned to kitchen duty in Block C. As for me, I just closed another merger, and tomorrow Marcus and I are flying to Paris. I'm buying a new robe, and this time no one is ever going to touch it but me. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you are here.